Welcome to the Bay Area Entrepreneur Center. So we are based in San Bruno, California. Think of us as the second office of Skyline College. So both Skyline College and the Bay Area Entrepreneur Center is about 20 minutes south of San Francisco. So thank you so much for being here. We usually host events, but we're really excited because we get to have guest hosts. So that's why Pauline is here, and she's going to actually talk to us about websites.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Thank you for the invitation to join you today. Hello, everyone. I see we are an international crowd, so that's wonderful. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Let me go ahead. I will untangle my windows. I have another screen over on this side, so you'll see me look to this side from time to time. That's what's going on. And if you'd be kind enough to put your questions in the chat, that would be super helpful. Nicole will let me know if I've missed anything crucial. Otherwise, we will have time for your questions a little bit later on. And I may not see everything that flashes past in the chat, so please forgive me. If there's something going on there that I've missed, feel free to email me later. I'll make sure you have my contact information. And yeah, I love talking about this stuff. So let me go ahead and attempt to share my screen. We will get started. If you haven't yet said hello in the chat, please do. Tell us what kind of business you have. That would be great. And off we will go. So I'm going to glance across and hopefully, yeah, unless somebody interrupts me, I'm going to assume that you can see some information now about websites. This will be pretty fast. Normally, I'm told I speak too slowly, so I don't think you'll have any problems. Today, or this evening, what we're going to cover. My number one tip for your sanity and the effectiveness of your website is to keep it simple. It does you a great service. It does your website visitors a wonderful service, and it brings in more money for you on your bottom line. We'll talk about what the key pages are that you need on your website and the key messages you should have, depending, of course, on the type of business. I will give you my top tips for cheating at design, even if you don't consider yourself to be a designer, so that your website can look really professional, whether you're working with someone to help you or whether you're on your own. We'll talk a little bit about getting found. That found by the search engines, often known as SEO, which is search engine optimization. And if budget is on your mind, I'll give you my best tips for how to stretch a limited budget so that you get the best result for your website with a modest expenditure. Why do we care about this? When somebody comes to your website, they're making up their mind about you in less time than it takes me to read this slide. First impressions really are very, very quick. So, hello again, this is me, I'm Pauline. Some of you will notice my accent is somewhat British. I now live outside San Francisco in the Bay Area. I've been here since 2004, but very happy to work with people all over the world. You can always find me, my website is paulinewiles.com. I will put that in the chat for you. Oh, Nicole just did that. Thank you so much, mind reader. That's wonderful. Please reach out to me, especially if you have a question that occurs to you in the shower tomorrow morning, or if you send me a message and I miss it in the chat, then that's my email address going in there now. Please be in touch. I'm happy to hear from you. So let's ask ourselves, what makes a great website? What does your website really need to do for you? First up, I would argue your business needs to look professional. These days, people are judging you. We have an author in the group today. You know that your books are judged by covers, but so in fact, our whole business is judged by whether our online presence is professional, and the website is a big part of that. For those of you with service-based businesses, most of what I say today will be directed at service businesses. I'll keep authors in mind as well. But generally for a service business, your website exists to persuade a visitor to take the next step in working with you. An online store, of course, is a bit different. We might be hoping somebody goes ahead and checks out. But for a service business, especially if your service is a bit of investment for the folks that come to your website, you really want the site to persuade them to take the next step, not necessarily to go all the way and complete a transaction. So a successful outcome from a website visit could be as simple as somebody just booking or scheduling a consultation call with you. And then thirdly, I would say for those folks who come to your website and they're not yet ready to work with you, they're not yet ready to buy something, but they like what they see, they like your vibe. If you're publishing, then they like the look of the kind of thing that you write, then you can ask them to stay in touch, which means using your website as a vehicle for gathering email addresses and gathering that permission to then add people to your email list. So let's talk then about this first tactic of keeping things simple. We all have so much going on these days that anything you can simplify in your life, I would argue, it's worth it. What does today's website climate look like? Basically, your visitors are in a hurry. None of us have enough time. There's a really good chance they're on a phone, a mobile phone or a cell phone, and they are distracted. There are lots of other calls on their attention, and so they probably are very easy to distract from your website. That means that you need to provide for them a lot less in the way of content, but more clarity. So you need to make it really easy for them to see at a glance, they're in the right place, you have something to offer, either you're solving a problem for them, or if you're entertaining them with your writing, then you can solve a need, which is to get some of that leisure time and for it to be enjoyable. You don't need a lot of written content on your website. This study showed it's mere seconds, in fact, that the average user will spend skimming your page before they make up their mind to either look further or to move on. And I want you to steer away, please, from having too many choices on your website. Think about those sites you go to where not only is the site very busy, but there are lots of calls for what you could do next. Follow them here, join something here, check out this program, sign up for this coming event. When you give people too many choices on your website, they get confused and the chances are they do nothing. This very famous study in the Harvard Business Review, you can look for it, the JAM study, researchers went into a grocery store and they did a special promotional display. The first time they had 24 flavors of jam for people to taste and hopefully then to go on and purchase with a coupon. They went back another day with only 6 flavors of jam. And what they found was on the day they were there with those 24 dizzying choices, there was indeed a lot more interest in their promotional stall. People were buzzing around and acting very interested, but shoppers were only 1/10 as likely to go ahead and make a purchase. This applies to your website as well. When you confuse people, you lose people. And then even worse, another study, if you give people too much choice, then even if they do actually make up their mind and do something, then they get worried about whether they did the right thing. The researchers said that whether it's a case of choosing an ice cream flavor or you've been choosing between careers and jobs, when we have too many choices as human beings, we tend to doubt ourselves. So don't put your website visitors in that position. I saw Nicole posted in the chat, what is it that you actually want them to do on your website? And we'll come back to that in a few minutes. Not only do you increase the chances that your ideal website visitor will land on your page and then take some action, but when you keep your website simple, you make it much quicker and easier for either you to put together and maintain or for your website designer to put together and maintain. And if you are working with a professional, then that means your invoice ends up lower as well. And in fact, in some cases, you can put your whole website on a cheaper platform if you're willing to keep it very simple with a small number of pages. In either case, when it is sleek and simple and looks very intentional, you actually look like you're more valuable because you look more confident, you look higher end. When I'm talking to a British audience, I say you look classier. I think that translates okay for the international folks on the call here. But yeah, keep it simple. You save yourself a ton of headaches and you actually look way better as well. When we go shopping, when we're allowed out and about on the high street again, we walk into stores and we can judge whether the stock is quality and worthy of premium prices simply by the way it's presented to us. So think about that for your business and your website as well. Marie Kondo, a couple of years ago, she burst into our lives and encouraged us to tidy up and get rid of clutter. And it's very much the same on your website. Keep what really works and that speaks to your core message, and then see what you can get rid of from the rest of it. So your turn. Nicole's asked you to think about this already. Head over to the chat if you wouldn't mind. Let me know when somebody comes to your website, what is the ideal next step that you would like them to take? I'll glance across at the chat, see what happens there. Yeah, lovely. So Joe says they should investigate one-to-one services. And depending on how you're structured and what the first step is then in working with you, that might well mean a complimentary consultation call. I know somebody, Elizabeth, I think is with us. Hope I've got that straight. You're an author, so the chances are you either want somebody to buy a book or join your email list so that you can tell them about the future publications that you have coming. Ah, there we go. Thank you. Just as I said it, Elizabeth, there you are. Either buy the book or sign up for a mailing list. Yeah, so anyone here who is an online store, you would probably like a cart and a checkout to happen. If you have a physical store, you'd love for people to come and see you there. And those of us with service businesses, then yeah, a really great next step is just start the conversation, get in touch, and let's start to decide what kind of service is needed. So I've said keep it simple, reduce what's on there. If you're only just getting started with a website, sometimes it can be confusing to even know what pages to add there. So as well as not having too many pages, you can do yourself a real favor, and one or two of you may have heard me say this before, keep your menus very lean and very clear. Don't get clever with your menu wording. Don't have too many menus. Whatever the item is, just call it by a very clear and simple name. And then, yeah, on every page, focus on what that next step is that you want. When you're just getting started, it's perfectly possible that 4 or 5 website pages is enough. And in fact, when you look at many website design packages, they do in fact recommend that you just start with 4 to 5. If you're in a service business, this schematic is helpful for you. You will almost certainly want a homepage, information about how you help people, some way of contacting you, some information about yourself. You can also add things like your news, any events, blog or resources. And hopefully once you've worked with some happy clients, you have testimonials as well. For those of us who are selling books, then you can simply replace services with your books or writing. And you want, of course, a way for people to stay in touch with you, which typically, social media is another discussion, but typically on your website, that means invite people to join your email list, possibly in return for a free resource. But yeah, the bigger the bubble here, the stronger the chances are that you need this on your website. And then you can add other information later as your sanity allows. We already said folks are super busy when they come to your site. They're only spending seconds in skimming your written content. So you can do yourself a big favor by making the text very easy for somebody in a hurry. That means you can rely on things like bullet points, keep your sentences and paragraphs short. Anyone on the workshop today who identifies as a writer, be careful here because we can go overboard. And things like subheadings just guide the eye as they skim down your page, looking to see what you have that can interest your visitor. Always, always talk to the website visitor and make the content about them more than about what you do. So what this means is when you're getting started with your business, when you're early in putting together your services or your processes, it can be really tempting to structure the website in terms of all that hard mental work you've done for what has to happen for you to deliver your work. So instead of that, I encourage you, go through your pages and even count up the number of times you're saying you instead of I or we. So this means you, the website owner over here, versus you, the website visitor. You get a better result when you address the website visitor directly. And instead of thinking about what process you go through to deliver your work, think about what's really in it for them. Why do they care? The best example I can give you, when somebody wants to work with me, they come to me and say, I want a website. Well, no, they don't. Nobody really wants a website. What we want in our business is the thing that a website can do for us. So I've got some examples of that in a moment. But yeah, so focus on why they really want this thing and the outcome they get, not necessarily the process that you go through. So if we have time, I think we do have time for this. Head over to the chat. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to amplify on these sentences. So instead of saying, if you're a nutritional coach, I will analyze your food journal. Instead of saying, if you're a career coach, I will provide you in this package, we'll have 3 one-hour coaching sessions. If you're a landscape gardener, instead of saying, I'm going to visit and spend 2 hours each month maintaining your backyard or your back garden, think how you would edit these by linking these to a sentence so that you, and then what benefit they could get from this. So nobody hires you because they want you to scrutinize their food journal. They're looking for some other benefit if you're the nutrition coach that they're coming to see. Nobody hires you because they want to give up 3 hours of their life for coaching. They're looking for an outcome. And frankly, not many people care if you stand in their back garden for 2 hours. Again, they want some kind of outcome from that service. So I will pause, I'll take a quick drink. If anything comes in the chat where you think you can identify what the real benefit here is, then this is a good practice exercise for how you might amplify or adjust what's on your own website. So I'll fill in the slight pause here and say, in the case of an author where your main product or service is entertaining or informing somebody with your writing, then we would turn these sentences around, but not so much by saying, buy my 300-page paperback, but something along the lines of, learn how to do something, if it's a how-to book, or lose yourself and escape to this world, if it's a novel. Basically, what is the benefit in entertaining somebody? Yeah, great job, Elizabeth. Okay, so here we go. Nobody wants their food journal analyzed. Elizabeth is saying, you want more energy, you want to glow. Yep. Lose yourself, escape to this world. Yes, okay, please steal that. All right, so here's just some examples of how we adjust those sentences. We don't say, I'm going to analyze your food journal. We say, you're going to work with me to get lifelong eating habits and more energy. Yes, a great job there, energy. A nice example. You don't really want the 3 hours of coaching. You want to feel more confident. You want clarity, that kind of thing. And again, you don't really, you don't care that somebody's in your back garden looking after it. You want to get that time back so you can relax and feel good and enjoy being with your family. Yes, garden party. Yeah, very nice, Nicole. Yeah. So this is just a really strong reminder here. Focus on what the person is coming to you looking for more than the actual experience or nuts and bolts process that you're delivering. And then you've seen this already on every single page. When somebody gets to the bottom, or even if it's a long page, they get partway down, what's the next thing that you want them to do? So maybe if they're joining your email list, you want them to grab your free resource. If it's your one-to-one services you want them to look at, then your action may well be, go ahead, schedule the call, check my calendar. I don't want this to be you. This is way too high. Apparently too many small businesses put a website together and they overlook completely that we need to tell people what to do next. All right, so if you are a graphic designer by trade or by experience, feel free to break all these rules. But if you're not, then one of the most common questions I get is, how can I make my website look attractive and professional when I don't really have an expert handle on design? So 6 tips for you here on the things that you can do to maximize your chances of looking good. Why do you care? It's about trust. Unfortunately, whatever business you're in, whether you're that landscape gardener or the nutrition coach, then people will lose trust in you if your website is not well designed. When you design carefully, you show your ideal visitor that you've thought about what they need, and so you're showing respect for them. Remember the flavors of jam, you're not offering 24 things that they could do, you're offering fewer options. And so your conversions, that means the number of people who take the action you want, that's going to go up. And quite simply, when you're careful in your design, you look more confident, you're more crisp, the whole thing just has a more professional weight to it. So 6 tips for you. Whether or not you have good data about where your people are coming from, these days you may as well assume that they're on a phone. If you design your website so that it looks good on a tiny screen, then you'll probably be fine on a bigger screen and you'll do yourself a big favor. If you overlook this, then you're in a world of hurt, because not only will many of your visitors give up, but I'm sorry to say, Google will judge you harshly as well. I've already said that clutter and too many decisions get in the way of somebody taking the decision and the action that you want them to take. And it also makes you look bad. So if you got started with a website back in the days of blogging, there's a good chance that you still have a sidebar. And that is one of my favorite areas to go and look at to check whether you've got outdated clutter, distractions, links that don't work, all kinds of ugly stuff live in your sidebar. But I see this in footers, I see this on pages that are neglected. Clutter can live all over the place on your website, and you can really do yourself a favor by tidying up. The trend these days in website design is for much larger text sizes and fewer words. So we know people are in a hurry. They don't have time to read 5,000 words on your homepage. Try 50 words instead. And you can use larger text on a phone, then that's obvious. But even on a bigger screen, you don't need very much if you can convey your main benefits as headlines. Please, please invest in your images. Whether that means that you are like me and spending many delightful hours looking at the selection of free images available to us now, or whether you invest in some reasonably priced stock photography, or even whether you go all the way and you decide that you can justify a brand photo shoot for your business, nothing drags down your website faster than low quality images. So if you've got a photo of you on there, it needs to be a decent photo that you took with your website in mind. Please don't pick the one of you at the cousin's wedding where you've cropped out the bridesmaids or something like that. Yeah. So I'm not keeping a close eye on the chat, but Jo has chimed in there. Professional photos are really worth it, and she feels much more confident now at having her face online. Nice job. Okay. Good images, we don't need to see those. Oh, what does this slide mean? Empty space. So when you're beginning, when you feel you're not an expert designer, you might be afraid of leaving empty space on your website. Don't be, it's fine. It's a very strong statement in graphic design to give the eye just some room to breathe. You don't have to fill every inch. And so leaving some empty space, it's perfectly fine. It looks intentional. It looks curated. And then my final tip for you here, I want to move on so that we have time for questions and discussion. When you want somebody to take action, try if you can to put it on a button instead of a text link. So the left-hand side here, I've buried my call to action in the middle of a paragraph. Okay, it's a different color, but there is a much stronger chance, studies have shown, that people are more likely to click on buttons than they are on text links. I think this is a phone thing again. If I'm on that small screen with my thumb, the button is just so much easier to navigate to and click. So those are some easy tips for pretending that you're a professional graphic designer when probably you're not. When in doubt, get rid of stuff. Less is always more. So this slide, for example, there's 2 different fonts, there's 1 color, there's a logo, that's it. You don't need a lot to convey your message really powerfully. All right, so search engine optimization, SEO, basically means these days, can Google find you? Will Google find you? Will Google send you website traffic? This is a specialist area. I'm not an SEO specialist, but I will give you some top tips here. Before you dive in and say, how do I improve my SEO? I talk at length. Catch me one day for a cup of tea. I'll talk to you at length about being careful before you get too hung up on SEO that people are actually using Google for your service. If you provide a high-end one-to-one service, if it's something a bit sensitive or anything kind of medical, there's a good chance that people are asking their trusted network for referrals instead of actually getting on Google and looking for your service. I have a whole other pep talk, Elizabeth, for authors. You can relax a bit because studies have shown that folks don't necessarily go to Google and ask what to read next. My sideways tip for you is Goodreads. But just be careful before you get too hung up on this. Are people actually going to Google to look for you? And if they do, is Google sending you the right type of quality lead who will go ahead and hire you for your high-end service? Again, I could share some personal experiences here. I get a lot of traffic from Google, but very few of my full service website clients come in that way. And even if Google sends you traffic, yay, that's great. But I honestly believe there is no substitute for you and your personal efforts at helping people discover what you do. So when I say get out there, that can be the COVID version or the real life version of you finding how to connect with your ideal audience. Now, all that said, I know you're still interested in impressing Google. So you could make this your full-time business and probably work 80 hours a week on trying to crack the Google algorithm. My warm and friendly suggestion here is don't. The algorithm will change. The likes of you and me being able to keep up with the Google algorithm, highly unlikely. If you're in the area where I'm located, you know that some of the Google brains are just down the road. There are a lot of very brainy people being paid excellent money to keep the algorithm one step ahead of you and me. However, what does not change with the Google algorithm is that Google rewards you for being relevant, keeping your content fresh and up to date, and being helpful and useful. So this, to me, sits very nicely with this whole concept of authentic marketing, of mindful marketing, where we're not chasing the top ranking for a day or so, we're genuinely trying to serve our website visitors. And I said before, make sure your website is decent on mobile or Google will penalize you. Diana says, buy an ad. Yeah, okay, well, that's a different strategy in terms of organic search and hanging in there for the marathon, not the sprint. I just encourage you, seek to serve, seek to be useful, and that will serve you best in terms of the natural discoveries that Google sends your way. And then you'll also want to check your analytics to see what pages on your website are performing best, and that can give you some clues for what people are searching for. Look, if you have the information available to you, at the search terms that actually bring people to your website. When you're thinking about creating new content, new pages, keyword research is super useful. That means, again, that you are checking not only with the Google tools for what people are searching for, but you also talk to your ideal audience and you hear from them what words and phrases they are using to describe the thing that you're offering and that you're selling. So you might think of yourself as a holistic health coach. Your audience might use different words when they're looking to solve the problem that you can help with. Yeah, go ahead and name your images. So if you're in the weeds of editing your website, that means go and look for the image description or the alt tag. And yeah, once again, stay authentic, talk to your reader. This is how you'll build long-term value for your website and get Google's attention. And yes, it does no harm at all when you have revamped your site or you've restructured. Go ahead and submit your sitemap to Google. This gives them a nudge to come and look and check out your pages and for the robots to have a fresh crawl over your site. If you're a local business, by which I mean you have a local, you have a location where people can come find you, check out Google My Business. Again, this is more of a specialism for getting found in local searches. But if you do have a shop front or you have an office where you can appear on Google Maps and take visitors, well worth a look here. All right, let me whiz along so we have some time for questions and discussion. If money is tight, what do you do? So actually, I'm going to put in the chat here, there's an article on my website, a blog post called 10 Questions to Ask Your Website Designer. Go ahead and look for that. And that will give you a good guide really to what's on this slide so that I can go extremely quickly in the interest of time. But basically, don't be afraid to ask the tough questions up front if you want to hire a web designer. Even in terms of who's doing the actual work, will they get you on board and then outsource to a lower wage country? Make them tell you about the pros and cons of the technology that they're recommending. There is no one ideal website technology, and they should be transparent with you that there are pros and cons for everything. And definitely ask about ongoing costs. So will they require you to have a maintenance plan? How much does it cost if you're trying to make an update yourself and you get stuck? So there's more information about that in the article on my site. But I welcome lots of searching questions when I am talking to a potential client. So don't be afraid to ask these. You probably do not hire a website designer every week. So if you are looking to make that investment, questions are always, always a good idea. I firmly believe you can make a really nice do-it-yourself website if you keep things simple. Where people get into trouble is they try to go for complicated templates and too much content and images that are flashing and whizzing and moving and that kind of thing. If you keep it really simple, you'll look very high end, you'll look like you are very intentional, and you can make a really nice website working on your own. If you're in the position where money is super tight, try to save on the technology that you use, but do spend, if necessary, on your photos and images. And that can mean a stock image that starts from about £10 or $10 each. Joe invested in professional photos, that's great too. Website technology costs are coming down. Shoot me a note if you want my top tips on the real bargain options for a very simple website. And budget for a website refresh, whether that's you or somebody else, probably every 2 to 3 years. My hope for you, if you hire me as a designer, I want you to make back the cost of what you spent hiring me in no more than about 6 months. So when I work with you and you pay my invoice, I want to elevate your online presence to the point where you can easily win back that money in no more than 6 months. And over the lifetime of your website, so 3 years, give or take, I want you to be able to make at least 10 times what you paid me in fresh revenue that your website has been able to generate. So keep that in mind, that websites unfortunately do not live and look good forever. So plan on a refresh. Don't spend 20 years worth of investment on your website right now. I, of course, am a passionate believer that everyone should have a simple and attractive website. And I would argue that for the online world, it's now non-negotiable. So I hope this helps. Let me leave you with some resources before we start to dig into questions and discussion. I have a free website starter kit and a listing of 33 of my favorite website and business tools. You can sign up for it here. It will ask for your email address. Go ahead, enter that, and then if you want to unsubscribe immediately, no worries. If I've sold you on the idea of a very simple website, you're willing to keep your site to just a few pages, and you'd like to work on your own, I have a free self-guided video course that talks you through that. So I'm putting that link into the chat as well. And yes, you can work with me. I will be delighted to build your website for you as a full service project. You can pick my brains for an hour, and so on with other options for getting some more expertise on your website. So once again, find me at paulinewiles.com, and if there's something we overlooked today, then web@paulinewiles.com is a really key way to get hold of me on email. Oh, Dionysia is here. Hello. Thank you very much. Yeah, good to know that you found the free resources useful. Thank you for that endorsement. I will go ahead and take a breath, take a drink. I'll stop sharing my screen. And Nicole, you can let me know what questions I missed and what else is on people's minds there.
Hello, everyone. That was really helpful. And I actually have a question myself. So when you create websites, are you building them from the ground up, sort of using like, what is it, Bluehost or GoDaddy, or do you do more like Squarespace and Wix?
So not surprisingly, I have some articles on my website where I go into details as to why I think some tools are right for some people and not right for others. When I create client websites, I either work on a platform called card.co, which is a super simple platform. It's very budget friendly, but it does restrict you to a simple website. Or the other one that I use when I'm designing a full service, more extensive website, you mentioned Squarespace, and yeah, that's where I build my client websites. As I said, there is no perfect technology for everybody. What you need and what's right for you really does depend on your circumstances. So my encouragement is, don't let a website designer tell you that one is better than another, because it's just a case of finding what is best aligned with your needs. But yeah, those are my top tools.
Thank you. So if you guys have a question, feel free to put it in the chat box now, because we have about, let's say, 10 more minutes.
Yeah, so I'm just looking back at what came up in the chat. In the meantime, Joe responded to something I said, I think, about our Google sending you the right people. I see so much advice these days online about how to market yourself, and it always seems to start with the how to and not the should you even. So I just had an email conversation this week. He said, I need a blog. And I nicely, I hope, responded and said, are you sure you need a blog? You need to have that conversation. Should I even be trying this? Before we all rush ahead of ourselves to the how to. So Joe, I hope I'm remembering that you were commenting on that piece where, in terms of before we lie awake at night wondering about our search engine rankings, just ask yourself, should I even be trying to impress Google? And if I do impress Google, will they send me the kind of person that is an ideal client for me?
Yes, and to piggyback off of that, it's like you have to know who your target audience is and where they're going to be, and that's what you need to create for them. It's almost like creating the perfect home for your perfect target audience. It's taking a step back and figuring out who you're trying to attract.
Yes, and if you're just getting started, there is no harm, I think, in reaching out to a few friends who are approximately your target audience and just having a friendly and honest conversation with them. You'll get some great tips there. Yeah, okay, great, Joe. So that confirms it.
Yeah, so I have another question, because I worked with a lot of website designers. So in
All
addition
right,
to the
shoot.
BAEC, I have a Latina lifestyle magazine, and then I do social media strategy. So there's always a website being created. But I have heard horror stories. I've been very lucky. I haven't worked with a website designer like this, but I've heard horror stories where people just create a website and they just don't actually teach the client how to use the website. So then they can't log in, they can't make changes. They are so overwhelmed with the technology. So how do you go about that with your clients?
So I have a combination when a project finishes of self-guided training resources that I've put together. So sometimes I draw on what's available from the official platforms I use. More often, I make my own training content for what I think a client really needs to know to get started. And then I offer, at the end of a project, a training and handover call when somebody's had a chance to go through some of that training and they have then their own questions to answer. And then in most of my website design packages, I include some extra help during the first 6 months, just for that time where somebody's not touched the website for a few weeks and they go to do something and they get stuck. One thing I would add to that, Nicole, so Squarespace is a platform I love. They had an advert in the middle of the Super Bowl this year, so that's a major sports event for the folks who are joining us from Europe. And their major promotional advert there really did give the impression that anyone can build a website in 2 hours on a Friday night. And I think that's a great thing to strive for. But almost all of my clients find there is a learning curve in getting used to a new website. So I think we can give ourselves a bit of grace. And if you ever struggle with making website edits, I want you to know that that is almost always the case. Some of the big providers are marketing in a way that they want to convince you that it's as easy as falling off your bicycle. And that is rarely my experience. There is usually a learning curve.
Anyone else have any questions? Put it in the chat box, or if you would like, you could just unmute yourself and ask the question. Okay. So if we don't have any more questions, because I know sometimes it gets a little nerve-wracking to ask a question, but again, you guys can reach Pauline. If you happen to have a question in the middle of the night, feel free to go to her website and send her an email and just ask that question. She may not answer at midnight, but she'll get it.
Yeah, almost certainly not. Although it could be midnight if you're on European time.
Yes.
Yeah, and some of these names actually today, Nicole, are familiar to me. So I think these folks know that they can get hold of me if they would like to.
Oh, lovely.
And I'd like to encourage folks here, if you've not checked into the other resources offered by the Bay Area Entrepreneur Center, then it's well worth staying in touch, because there's a lot of good stuff going on. And I guess one of our big benefits from COVID is it really opens up the borders for who can attend various events.
Yes. So I put my email address in the chat box. Again, the Bay Area Entrepreneur Center. We are based in San Bruno, California. We are doing most of our events now virtual. We might be doing some hybrid events where it's virtual and in person later in this year. But again, we are about 20 minutes south of San Francisco. So our next event is August 5th, about how to prepare for your holiday campaigns. If you're interested in hosting an event like Pauline, feel free to send me an email, and that way we could set it up and you guys could pick the date. We handle all the promotional items, and that's it. Thank you all so much for being here.